Wow, look at you. You made it all the way to the national finals. Let's see a show of hands. How many students out there know what they actually want to be when they get out of college? Anybody? Okay, we got a few. Any future engineers out there? Yeah? Okay, good. We got a couple future engineers. Well, you know they always say that if you follow your passion, you can't go wrong. Do you believe that? Well, I'm going to tell you a story today about how I followed my passion, and then you can decide. In fact, it was all by accident. I grew up in a town of about 600 people. My entire hometown can fit in this audience today. And it was a lovely place, typical small town community. And there was not a single big building in town. In fact, probably the biggest building around was probably the 8-story bank building in nearby Sioux Falls. But for some reason, I was in love with skyscrapers. In fact, there were 3 things I loved. I loved skyscrapers, I loved animals, and I loved a good challenge. In fact, the harder the challenge, the better. But I never figured out how I could turn those 3 things together into any kind of a career. So I was planning to be a teacher. In fact, my mom had been a teacher. I loved tutoring, and teachers get the whole summer off. That sounded awesome. So that's what I decided, and I went on to the South Dakota School of Mines and was moving forward with that plan until I had a conversation with my freshman counselor. And he said, "Have you ever thought about engineering?" Engineering? Why? He said, "Well, for starters, you'll get twice the job offers and twice the starting salary." Sign me up. I'm good. Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. So that worked fine until at that point I realized I had no idea what engineering was. Luckily, for the next 4 years, I figured that out, and I actually learned that some engineers build skyscrapers. Aha! Structural engineering. That was for me. Until I got to my senior year of college, and I started interviewing. And one of my interviews was with Shell Oil Company, and I learned about the whole offshore energy sector. Growing up in South Dakota, I didn't even know the offshore energy sector existed. Absolutely no clue. But it sure did sound glamorous. They started talking to me about how I'd get to fly in helicopters out over the ocean to the offshore platforms. That was glamorous. They told me about all these type of structures that we would get to build. They would rise out of 2-mile water depth in the ocean, and they would drill for 4 miles below that into the rock. That sounded glamorous. And in fact, when I got to my senior year and I interviewed not only with Shell, I actually had 3 job offers waiting for me, and every single one of them was a great job offer. The one I decided to take ended up being the one with Shell, and I'm glad I did. In fact, that starting salary offer with Shell was more than both of what my parents' salaries and incomes combined were. That was really weird, actually. The funny thing is, since I started with Shell, I have not worked one single day as a structural engineer. The first time I pulled out my steel manual, my mentor said, "Put that away, that's not what we hired you for." So, in fact, what I learned very quickly in my time with Shell is that Shell actually hires people with a very sound math and science foundation, and they teach you everything else. They just want to know they're hiring people that know how to learn. So, in fact, I was hired as a facilities engineer. They taught me to be a mechanical engineer. They taught me to be a chemical engineer. They taught me to be a commissioning engineer. And then they taught me to be a project engineer. And today, in my job right now, I manage other project managers. And each of those project managers are managing projects that cost about $1 billion each. And those aren't even our big projects. Some of these projects are on a scale that's so massive it's hard to even imagine. This may help. Those are some of the skyscrapers and challenges that I've found outside of South Dakota. Whoa. In fact, following my passion has led me to help build some of the most amazing structures ever created by man. This particular structure has a top deck that is the size of 3 football fields sitting side by side. And my passion has also led me to travel around the world. I've worked for 6 months in London, I've worked in Italy, I've worked in Curacao, which is an island in the Caribbean where I'd get to go scuba diving with sharks on my days off. I've worked in Brazil, I've worked in Malaysia. And in every one of these projects, we were setting new water depth records. It's been really exciting. And when you're working in a mile deep water, you find some amazing creatures. In the opening frame, you saw a big fin squid. It has tentacles about 26 feet long. We took pictures of it using our underwater remote-operated vehicles. The scientists were excited when we handed it off to them. The white crabs and the mussels that you saw in the video, those are part of a chemosynthetic community. In the water depths we work in, there is no photosynthesis because there is no sunlight. So they actually feed off of natural oil seeps that come from the seafloor. I love animals, so this kind of stuff makes my day when I get to work with it. But none of this prepared me for my assignment in Alaska. In Alaska, my passion for animals and the environment came alive. In fact, it came to my backyard. This is Miss Brownie and her twins, and they did live in my backyard, and my job at Shell was to protect their environment. Oops, it started a little early, but one of my roles when I was in Alaska was to collect data on the animals in the ice. One of the projects that we did was put acoustic arrays on the seafloor to track the bowhead whale migration. Here's an example of the sounds. A couple of the other projects while I was working in Alaska, before anyone could fly drones, we had approval to fly special drones to be able to do lookouts for walrus and seals so that if we had ships transiting through the area, we could divert the ships before they got to the walrus and the seal. And one of my favorite projects was actually starting up engineering academies in several of the high schools throughout Alaska. The problem is, my career at Shell still doesn't seem finished. Even though I've gotten to take on some incredible challenge and I've finished all those, I've gotten to build some amazing structures. I've gotten to protect a lot of animals, but there's still something missing. The problem is that there's always waste. This is a big problem just for the rest of the world and Shell alike. We all produce a lot of waste. So I was really excited to get invited here to the Future City Challenge and to see all of you guys trying to tackle this problem, because some of these problems in this world are so big that it's going to take all of us working together to be able to find a solution. This is not glamorous. In fact, a lot of our offshore platforms are just like small cities, just like the ones that you built. We have a couple hundred people living on board. They're living and working and eating, and they generate waste just like everybody else. So offshore, we have to have a waste management strategy. We reduce, we reuse, we recycle to an absolute extreme, because anything left has to get shipped back onshore. Some of your ideas on gasification are especially interesting. Could we be able to take waste on an offshore platform and burn it and create the electricity that we need to run the TVs, to heat the water, to run the washer and dryer, to light up the living quarters? All of that would be excellent. In fact, who knows, maybe some of our engineers at Shell are already working on gasification. Here's what I do know. I do know that you guys must have been very, very passionate about your projects to be able to make it to the national finals. And I'm guessing that a few of you are interested in science. So ask yourselves, what is it that you really liked about your Future City Challenge? What talents, what skills, what personality traits was it that made you so successful to be able to get to the national finals? What is it you really care about? In fact, what What is your skyscraper? Because if you follow your passion, it's going to take you to a very good place. That's what's happened for me. I could have taken many choices and many different paths, and I'm sure every single one of them would have led to a very great place. But I can't imagine doing anything different than what I'm doing today, except maybe in retirement. And in fact, at this point in my career, I think about that from time to time. And so when I do retire for Shell, I already have plans. I'm actually planning to be a science teacher, probably back in South Dakota. Thank you. Congratulations to all of you that made it to the national finals. I'm happy for you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moore.